When danger struck, one fearless K9 leapt into action, saving his handler's life and proving loyalty stronger than fear. A late-night chase, a gun aimed at a deputy, until his loyal K9 made the ultimate move that turned near death into survival. This is the true story of a German shepherd who risked everything, shielding his handler from certain death in the line of duty. One shot fired, one leap of loyalty, and a heroic K9 changed his handler's fate forever. This is their unforgettable true story. The story begins in the early hours of dawn, in a quiet town in North Carolina where the morning mist drifted low across open fields and the rising sun painted streaks of gold across the horizon. Sergeant David Lawson stood at the edge of the training ground, his boots sinking slightly into the damp earth as he watched his partner bound toward him with unstoppable energy. His partner wasn't another soldier or officer, it was Titan, a large German shepherd with a coat that shimmered like polished bronze in the first light of day. Titan was more than a dog. To those who had seen him in action, he was a force of nature, intelligent, fearless, and deeply loyal. He had been with David for nearly 3 years, and in that time, their bond had grown stronger than steel. To outsiders, Titan was a working dog, a highly trained K9 assigned to the county sheriff's office. But to David, Titan was family, a partner who would protect him with every ounce of strength he had. David often said that Titan wasn't just a K9, he was a living guardian angel. That description would prove hauntingly true on a night that neither of them could ever forget. But before that fateful night, there was a long road of preparation, dedication, and countless hours of training that shaped Titan into the hero he would become. David had always loved dogs, but he never imagined he'd one day owe his life to one. He grew up in a small southern town, the son of a mechanic and a schoolteacher, where weekends were spent fishing in the river and playing baseball at the local park. He dreamed of serving in law enforcement from a young age, inspired by his uncle, who had been a state trooper. After joining the sheriff's department in his 20s, David distinguished himself with his discipline, leadership, and calm under pressure. It wasn't long before he was chosen to join the K9 unit, a position that required not just skill but patience, empathy, and an ability to form deep trust with an animal partner. When David first met Titan, the young German shepherd was just under 2 years old, imported from Europe and brimming with raw potential. Titan was muscular, sharp-eyed, and restless, with a drive that demanded constant challenge. Many dogs came through the program, but Titan stood out immediately, not because he was perfect, but because he was relentless. Where other dogs hesitated, Titan pushed forward. Where some grew tired, Titan refused to stop. The early days were not easy. Titan tested David constantly. He barked with impatience during drills, pulled hard against his lead, and would sometimes ignore commands if he thought he knew better. But David saw something extraordinary in him, a determination that mirrored his own. Instead of trying to break Titan's spirit, David worked to channel it. He learned Titan's language, the subtle flick of his ears, the tension in his shoulders, the gleam in his eyes that revealed when he was focused or distracted. Slowly, their bond deepened. The training was grueling. David and Titan spent long days practicing tracking, scent detection, suspect apprehension, and building search drills. Titan learned to detect the faintest traces of narcotics hidden in cars, to track the scent of a person across miles of terrain, and to respond instantly to David's every signal. But more than that, Titan learned to trust David completely, and David learned to put his faith in Titan. There were moments during training when that bond shone brightly. On one occasion, Titan located a hidden suspect in a building faster than any other dog in the unit. On another, he ignored the chaos of a training scenario, a shouting crowd, car alarms blaring, smoke grenades popping, and locked onto his target with laser focus. Every time Titan excelled, David felt an overwhelming pride. Not pride in himself, but in his partner. Their reputation as a team grew. Within the sheriff's office, David and Titan became known as the unstoppable pair. They assisted in high-risk warrants, searched for missing children, and tracked fugitives across thick forests and open fields. Each mission deepened their connection. At night, when the shift ended, David often took Titan home. Though trained as a police dog, Titan had a gentler side that few outside the unit ever saw. At home, he became playful, rolling in the grass, chasing tennis balls, and curling up at David's feet like a family pet. But beneath that playful exterior was always a readiness to protect. Titan never truly let his guard down. Even when David dozed on the couch, Titan would lie near the door, ears perked, alert to every sound. The call that would change everything came late on a summer evening. The sky was darkening, the last hints of orange fading into deep blue, when David's radio crackled with urgency. There had been an armed robbery at a rural gas station, and the suspects had fled on foot into the dense woods nearby. The men were believed to be armed and dangerous. Officers were already in pursuit, but the terrain was challenging, and visibility was low. The K-9 unit was requested immediately. David didn't hesitate. Within minutes he and Titan were in the cruiser, lights flashing as they sped toward the scene. Titan sat upright in the back, eyes sharp, body taut with anticipation. He knew the energy in David's voice, the tension in the air. Something serious was unfolding. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic. Patrol cars lined the roadside, radios crackled with overlapping voices, and deputies scanned the tree line with flashlights. Witnesses had reported 2 suspects, both masked, both carrying handguns. They had fired shots into the air as they fled, a warning to anyone who dared follow. The woods ahead were thick and unforgiving, a tangle of branches and shadows. David strapped on his vest, adjusted his radio, and clipped Titan's lead to his harness. Titan leaned forward, muscles quivering, eager to begin. David knelt down and met his eyes. "Easy, boy," he whispered, steadying both of them. "Let's bring them in." With a single command, Titan lowered his head and began to track. His nose swept the ground, catching the faint trail left behind by the fleeing suspects. David followed close, flashlight beam cutting through the dark, weapon drawn and ready. The other deputies fanned out, but soon Titan's focus pulled them deeper into the forest, away from the main group. The night grew darker as they pushed into the woods. The air was heavy with humidity, the ground uneven and damp. Titan moved with purpose, pulling steadily, pausing only to verify the trail before surging ahead again. David's heartbeat quickened. He trusted Titan completely, but he also knew the danger they were walking into. The suspects were armed, desperate, and unpredictable. Minutes felt like hours as they advanced. Then Titan stiffened, his ears pricked, and his body froze. He had locked onto something. David scanned the darkness, straining his eyes. There, a faint rustle, the snap of a twig. Someone was close. Before David could react, a figure emerged from the shadows. A man, tall and masked, raised a handgun and aimed directly at David. In that split second, time slowed. David felt his stomach lurch, his body instinctively trying to react, but it was too late. The gun was already leveled at his chest. And then Titan moved. Like a lightning bolt, Titan lunged forward, teeth bared, muscles exploding with power. He struck the gunman with full force, knocking him backward as the gun discharged. The shot tore through the air, missing David by inches. Titan's jaws clamped down on the suspect's arm, forcing the weapon down and away. The man screamed, struggling desperately as Titan held firm, his body twisting, his strength unyielding. David's training kicked in. He moved quickly, securing his weapon, shouting commands, and within seconds, he had the suspect disarmed and in cuffs. Titan released only when commanded, panting heavily, his eyes burning with intensity. But it wasn't over. A second gunman was still out there. And as David secured the first suspect, he heard movement to his left, a shadow breaking into a sprint through the trees. "Titan, track!" David ordered, and the dog was off again, surging forward with unrelenting speed. David followed, adrenaline coursing through him. The chase led them deeper into the woods, where the canopy was so thick that moonlight barely touched the ground. The second suspect was fast, darting through brush and leaping over fallen logs, but Titan was faster. He closed the distance with incredible agility, weaving through obstacles, eyes locked on his target. The man glanced back, panic flashing in his movements, and fired blindly into the dark. Bullets whizzed past, striking trees with sharp cracks. David ducked low, shouting, "Stop! Sheriff's office!" But the suspect kept running. Titan did not hesitate. With a final burst of power, he leapt, colliding with the man mid-stride. They tumbled to the ground, Titan gripping the suspect's arm, preventing him from aiming his weapon. David was there in seconds, securing the man, breathing hard, heart pounding. When the danger finally passed, when both suspects were in custody and the forest fell silent again, David knelt beside Titan. He ran his hand over the dog's head, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life, boy," he whispered. "You saved me." That night would forever be etched in David's memory. The moment when a gun was aimed at his chest and a loyal K9 leapt into the line of fire. Titan hadn't hesitated, hadn't thought of his own safety. He had acted out of pure loyalty, instinct, and love for his handler. News of the incident spread quickly. The local media hailed Titan as a hero. Headlines read, "K9 saves handler from certain death." Community members sent letters, toys, and treats for Titan, praising his bravery. At the sheriff's office, Titan received a medal for valor, presented in front of cheering deputies and proud family members. David accepted it on his behalf, but he knew Titan didn't need medals. Titan didn't care about recognition. He only cared about one thing, protecting his partner. Yet, behind the celebration, David felt a quiet weight. That night had been a close call, too close. The reality of how fragile life could be struck him harder than ever. And it deepened his gratitude for the dog who had been willing to sacrifice everything to keep him alive. The weeks that followed the night in the woods became some of the most emotional days of Sergeant David Lawson's career. Titan's name spread through local news stations, then regional outlets, and soon national publications picked up the story. It wasn't every day that AK-9 literally leapt in front of a bullet for his handler, but Titan had done exactly that, shielding David from what would have been certain death. Overnight, Titan transformed from a loyal working dog into a national symbol of courage and loyalty. The sheriff's department was inundated with letters, emails, and calls. Children from local schools sent hand-drawn pictures of Titan, with hearts and paw prints covering the pages. Retired officers wrote letters of admiration, telling David how his partner reminded them of the bond they had shared with their own service dogs years ago. Even complete strangers dropped off bags of food, toys, and blankets for Titan, wanting to honor his sacrifice in any way they could. David was both humbled and overwhelmed. At the department's award ceremony, where Titan received his official Medal of Valor, the crowd stood and cheered as Titan barked proudly, tail wagging like a flag of triumph. David smiled, but his chest felt tight. He knew better than anyone that while people were clapping for Titan's bravery, the reality of that night was far more sobering. If Titan had been 1 second slower, David might not have lived to hear that applause. Yet Titan didn't seem burdened by the gravity of his actions. He was the same spirited, eager dog as always, bounding into work each morning, ready to track, search, or chase, as if nothing had changed. For Titan, it wasn't about glory. Protecting his handler was simply who he was. In the days after the incident, David found himself reflecting more deeply on the nature of loyalty. He had always understood that dogs were faithful creatures, but Titan's actions went beyond instinct. That night, Titan had made a choice. He had chosen to place himself in harm's way to save David. It was a choice born out of an unbreakable bond, a level of devotion that most humans never experience, even with one another. Life soon returned to a cautious routine, but with a heightened sense of awareness. The sheriff's office continued to rely on David and Titan for dangerous assignments, but now, whenever they were dispatched, fellow deputies often exchanged looks of silent respect. Everyone knew what Titan was capable of. Everyone knew that David was alive because of him. One case in particular tested them again. Several months later, David and Titan were called to assist in the search for a missing child in the outskirts of town. A 5-year-old boy had wandered away from his backyard into the nearby woods. Hours of searching by volunteers and deputies had yielded nothing. Panic was rising, as night was falling and temperatures were dropping quickly. David clipped Titan's harness and knelt down. "Find him, boy. Bring him home." Titan's nose hit the ground, and within minutes he picked up the child's scent. David jogged behind him, heart racing, flashlight beam bouncing through the trees. Titan pulled hard, weaving through underbrush, ears twitching with focus. And then, in a small clearing, they found him, a tiny boy curled up under a fallen log, shivering and crying softly. Titan approached gently, lowering himself, tail wagging slowly as if to say, "You're safe now." The boy reached out with trembling fingers and buried them in Titan's fur. David called in the location, relief washing over him as the child was carried back into the arms of his parents. Once again, Titan had been the difference between tragedy and salvation. But it wasn't just dramatic rescues or dangerous standoffs that defined Titan's story. It was the everyday moments that made him extraordinary. In the patrol car, Titan would rest his head on the seat beside David, as though reminding him that he was never alone. On long, silent nights, when the weight of the job pressed heavily, Titan's steady presence was a source of comfort. He was more than a partner. He was a lifeline, a reminder that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it comes in the form of a loyal companion sitting quietly by your side. Still, David couldn't shake the memory of that gun pointed at him in the woods. He replayed it in his mind at night, the glint of metal, the cold certainty that he had no time to react. Then Titan's leap, the snarl, the sound of the shot going wide. The reality was haunting, and it deepened David's gratitude. He began to see every day as a gift he wouldn't have had if Titan hadn't been there. Titan's story spread beyond law enforcement circles. He and David were invited to community events, where children lined up to pet the heroic German Shepherd. They appeared on a local morning show, where Titan sat calmly at David's side, eyes scanning the room with quiet vigilance. When the host asked David what made Titan so special, David didn't hesitate. "He's not just a dog. He's my partner, my protector, and my best friend. Titan doesn't think about himself. He doesn't calculate risks. He just knows one thing: protecting me is his mission. And I owe him my life." The audience applauded, but David's words weren't meant for applause. They were an expression of truth. Time, however, moves quickly, even for heroes. Titan continued to serve with unwavering dedication for several more years. Together, he and David assisted in countless operations, tracking fugitives, finding missing persons, detecting narcotics, and providing support during high-risk arrests. With every mission, Titan proved again and again that his loyalty had no limits. But as the seasons changed, David began to notice small signs. Titan's once boundless energy began to slow. He still worked with determination, but after long days, he was more tired than before. His muzzle began to gray, and his eyes carried the gentle wisdom of age. It was inevitable. No hero can serve forever. After nearly 8 years of service, Titan's official retirement was announced. The department held a ceremony, honoring him not just as a dog, but as a deputy who had given his all. Officers who had served alongside Titan shared stories, laughter, and tears. They remembered the night Titan saved David's life. They remembered the children he had found, the suspects he had stopped, the countless hours he had stood guard over his community. David stood at the podium, his voice steady but emotional. "There are many heroes in this world, but few with 4 legs and a wagging tail. Titan has done more for me, for this department, and for this community than words could ever capture. He didn't just save my life, he showed us all the meaning of loyalty." Titan barked once, as if in agreement, and the crowd laughed and clapped. His medal of valor shone in the light, but the real honor was written in the faces of everyone who had been touched by his service. Retirement didn't mean the end of Titan's story. It meant a new chapter, one filled with long walks in the neighborhood, afternoons chasing tennis balls, and evenings stretched out on the porch with David. For the first time in years, Titan could rest without being on alert, though his ears still twitched at unfamiliar sounds. The guardian in him never truly faded. In those quieter days, David often sat with Titan and reflected on the journey they had shared. He thought about the boy they found in the woods, the countless lives they had touched, and most of all, the night Titan leapt between him and death itself. That moment defined everything. It was the moment that showed just how deep the bond between man and dog could go. As the years passed, Titan grew older. His steps slowed, his play became gentler, but his spirit remained unbroken. David cherished every day, knowing that time was precious. And when Titan finally crossed the Rainbow Bridge surrounded by love, his legacy remained unshakable. The sheriff's office dedicated a memorial to him, a statue of a German shepherd standing tall and proud at the entrance to the K9 unit building. Beneath it, an inscription read, "Titan, a hero, a guardian, a partner forever." David visited often. He would place a hand on the statue and close his eyes, remembering the warmth of Titan's fur, the fire in his eyes, the sound of his paws pounding the earth as he raced to protect him. And though Titan was gone, David knew that his spirit lived on, not just in the department, not just in the community, but in every life he had touched. The bond between a handler and a K9 is not easily explained. It's built on trust, forged in danger, and sustained by love that defies words. David and Titan's story reminds us all that loyalty comes in many forms. Sometimes it's found in the courage of a soldier, sometimes in the sacrifice of a friend, and sometimes it comes with fur, a wagging tail, and eyes that see straight into your soul. Titan's legacy is not only that he saved his handler from certain death, but that he showed the world the depth of devotion a dog can have for his human. He was proof that true loyalty is timeless, and true courage is instinctive. Even today, David shares Titan's story at schools, community events, and law enforcement conferences. He tells young recruits what Titan taught him, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. And he tells children that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes, they wear fur and walk on four paws. The story of Titan is a reminder that the purest kind of love is selfless, and the purest kind of heroism is born from loyalty. It is a story that will never be forgotten, a legacy that continues to inspire, and a bond that lives forever in the hearts of all who hear it. And for David, no matter how many years pass, the memory remains clear, the moment when Titan leapt through the darkness and saved him. That was the night when man and dog became one, when loyalty was tested and proven, when a K9 became not just a partner, but a hero for eternity. This is the story of Titan, the K9 hero who saved his handler from certain death, a loyal dog whose courage redefined what it means to be a protector, a partner, and a friend. If you were moved by Titan's incredible story of courage and loyalty, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories of loyal dogs and the unbreakable bonds they share with humans.